of wisdom. Before we tell this tale, know one uncompromising truth. No matter what you've heard or what you've been taught, know this one thing: oral tradition does not survive. The surviving Hopi Indian will recite an oral history to explain what these carvings mean. And sadly, they couldn't be further from the truth. The Aborigine will tell you through their oral tradition that these are ancient travelers from the skies, which they clearly are not. The Polynesians and the descendant of the Rapa Nui people will tell us many tales handed down from their fathers of the Moai and their meaning. And unfortunately, they are all completely wrong. This is not meant to be disparaging and degrading in any way, and instead it is meant to enlighten the living to one simple truth: oral tradition will never survive. Why? Because every human being who survives the end and knows the truth is subsequently taken from this earth. Every man, woman, or child who sees what happens in the end, suddenly they vanish without a trace. What is left is mankind trying to make sense of what happened. And without any explanation or knowledge, they began creating a flawed and feeble oral history. A history that never was. The Moai will tell us a story that no Polynesian has ever heard. They will tell the story of the Great Flood, a flood that destroyed the world. However, look closer at these majestic beings, and you'll see an ancient story that has not been spoken on this planet for more than 10,000 years. The Moai stand tall, and yet some are taller, and others wore a strange hat or crown of authority. We know it is a crown of authority because all ancient headdress is a symbol of authority. From the golden crowns of Egypt to the humble plumage of feathers on the heads of the North American Indian, headdress was always worn by those who would lead a people and a nation. And yet, it is more than a symbol of authority. It is more than royalty. For there is something far more important than these, and knowing it will completely undo our human history.
Just because you pay less with Groupon doesn't mean you get less. Haircuts 60% off, nails 50% off.
Headdress is the sign of a leader. But there is something else. Every ancient leader, teacher, and god king of our history have strange and elongated ears. In every culture throughout the world, each leader had two things in common: headdress and also strange and elongated ears. No matter what part of the earth you find, all ancients had elongated ears. Understanding this query will undo all that has been done, and it will also reveal a future that you can't imagine. The Moai who stand in this place are not like these Moai that you find scattered and buried in the ruins. When the floodwaters came, the world was destroyed, and the bodies of these megaton monstrosities were swallowed up by the sea. And thousands of years later, we see their corpses littering the countryside, with none to bury them. Nevertheless, look closely and notice there is a difference between these corpses who were devoured by the sea and these who stand with their backs to the sea. Look closer and you will see that their ears are not just elongated, but that there is something in them. These ears appear to be longer than normal because there is something connected to them. This apparatus that is inserted into the ear is actually mechanical. It is a device that once inserted into the ear gives its user information. The Moai stand in the time of the flood, and yet they stand with their backs against the ocean and against the flood, for they knew something the others did not. And when the flood waters came and wiped away the world, these with their backs to the sea were untouched. All the Moai which had not this device were murdered, but these who had this device lived. This device is inserted within the ear, and it coincides with the end of the world. Which brings us to the last, greatest, and most technological peoples on the earth, the Mayans. They are known for their wisdom, their masonry, and their uncanny ability to be more precise than we are at nearly everything. They are the one peoples who came before us that have us continually scratching our heads in amazement. They are a people who had supreme intelligence, and so much so that nearly every calendar and every star chart or cosmic alignment that they created is more accurate than anything we have today, and that's including what we can do with a computer. They were an all-knowing people who left this earth and left us knowing nothing. Their works are like all the other great ancient nations, and that is celestial. They were obsessive about the cosmos and the cycles of life. However, there is a secret that they share with all other great nations, and that is headdress. The Mayans are North American, and they too wore a feathered crown. Like the American Indian and all ancient indigenous peoples, feathered headdress was worn as a sign of power, authority, and kingship. When approaching an ancient village, you will always know who is in charge by the headdress. The Mayans also shared this feathered custom, but the reason that this is the rule instead of an exception is earth-shattering. In the ancient world, any use of a feather, whether in art or hieroglyphic, always symbolized wisdom and flight. The feathered wings of a bird are found upon a serpent, planets, insects, and human beings. And each of these depictions are to illustrate the fact that each of these subjects could fly. Nevertheless, when you find a man with a crown of feathers covering every inch of his head instead of his body, that is a clue. Wings on the human head means that only the head could fly, and not the body. To understand this great wisdom, all one has to do is understand ancient culture and that of the indigenous peoples of the world. The leader of the people, or chief of the people, is always found with a full braid of feathers covering his head. And these feathers symbolize the fact that this leader had the ability that no other tribesman had, and that is, he could talk to the sky god. The feathers adorn the head because only the head can fly, and only his head can soar into the heavens. And in the heavens of heavens, there is the voice of the sky god. The Mayans, who were superior to us in every way, also received their great knowledge from the sky god. This knowledge has been hidden from mankind for over 1,000 years, and yet it hides in plain sight. The reason we are unable to unlock this powerful and holy knowledge is because we are arrogant. We believe we are better than anything that came before us. And sadly, This is why we are the slowest learners ever to walk on this earth. Gather yourselves and hold your hearts, for what comes next is the end. This is the Mayan king in full feathered regalia. And now, this is the Mayan king without his headdress. This is Bluetooth. It is a technologically advanced form of communication that is exactly what we have today. And it is also a form of communication that requires a satellite, a black night satellite. It has been watching our world for over 50,000 years. It has the ability to clothe itself in dark matter, which allows itself to be seen in 1 minute and then completely invisible in the next. This alien satellite has seen more civilizations of man on this earth than we know of, and it presides over the life of the earth and also the death of our flesh. Before the cognitive dissonance takes hold of your mind, and before your own thoughts begin to say, "This is impossible. This couldn't possibly be true," look again at this Mayan king. He is walking, and he is alone. And then again, look at his lips. He is clearly speaking. And in his ear is who he is speaking to. The appearance of this alien satellite coincides with the destruction of planet Earth. If we look back throughout human history, we will understand what these strange paintings mean. They are messages, they are cries, and they are tears. And they all have one thing in common. They all show us a view of the cosmos that only a satellite can provide. The appearance of this alien satellite in our skies means that our world is coming to an end. A satellite is connected to every ancient and prehistoric people who have ever lived, and yet it is the last message they ever send. And then their world goes silent, and their breath ends. There is a reason the ancients were obsessive about the stars and of the cosmos. There is a reason they looked deep into the deepest parts of space. There is a reason they took a collective understanding of every star and charted it in our galaxy. There is a reason they looked deeper into the cosmos than any of us could ever imagine. And there is a reason why their measurements and their calculations are so precise. And the reason is they were scared. The rise and fall of Earth is in a cycle. It is a calendar. It is a clockwork. And our end